Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the November meeting of Durham County Council's Cabinet. I'm Councillor Simon Hennig, Leader of Durham County Council and Chair of this meeting. This meeting is taking place on Wednesday, the 18th of November, and is being recorded live to the Council's website and will be available to be viewed for a minimum of 6 months. Please be aware that any footage from the meeting can be used in subsequent media broadcasts. I would like to give a warm welcome to members, officers, and any members of the public or media who are watching this live feed of the meeting. I think everyone's now aware of the housekeeping rules for us all to follow to ensure that the meeting runs as efficiently as possible. However, please note that if I lose my connection, Councillor Alan Napier, Deputy Leader of the Council, will take over in my absence until connection is restored. Before I move on to the formal business on the agenda, I can confirm we have received apologies from Councillor Marshall and all other members of the Cabinet are present. Can I also say that we have a question from Councillor Shuttleworth on item 6 on the agenda. And on item 12 on the agenda, I'll be inviting Councillor John Robinson to address Cabinet. So if I can turn to the agenda, item 1 is public questions. I understand that no questions were submitted in advance of the meeting, and so in accordance with procedure rules, therefore there are no questions for this part of the meeting. Item 2 is minutes. Could I have a mover and seconder, please, to the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of October.
Move the minutes, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Napier. Can I have a seconder, please?
Second the minutes, Chair.
Thank you. If we can agree the minutes are a correct record, if there's any dissent, please indicate that in the chat function. Can we agree the minutes?
Agree the minutes, Chair.
Thank you. There's no indications of dissent, so I can confirm the minutes are agreed. Item 3, declarations of interest. Can I ask if there are any declarations from members, please? No, I think there are no declarations of interest for this meeting. So we then move on to item 4, Local Council Tax Reduction Scheme 2021-22 and Council Tax COVID-19 Hardship Fund payments. If I can ask John Hewitt, Corporate Director of Resources, to present the reports.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. John Hewitt, Corporate Director Resources, and good morning, members of Cabinet. This report sets out the proposed local council tax reduction scheme for next financial year 2021-22, and we are proposing that the scheme remains substantially unchanged in that it will continue to offer 100% support from council tax for eligible claimants. Paragraph 5 sets out the scheme has 58,000 claimants, and of those 62% are of working age. The cost of the scheme to the council is estimated at circa £62 million for 2020-21 financial year. The report also sets out the impact of coronavirus on the number of claimants and is set out in paragraph 10, and at its peak the council had almost 3,000 working age claimants in addition who were expecting awards in 2020-21. We anticipate the cost of that being circa £5 million higher than it was in 2019-20. Chair, details of the hardship fund are set out from paragraph 11 of the report, and Durham County Council provided a further reduction of up to £300 to eligible claimants, and we're proposing to continue that support into 21-22 with a further £100 support to provide ongoing additional help in the next financial year for eligible claimants. The relevant policy amendments are attached to Appendix 2, as is the relevant policy, and the recommendations are set out in paragraph 17. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. If we can then move to the report and recommendations, can I invite Councillor Napier, Deputy Leader of the Council, to speak, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Morning, everyone. I'm Alan Napier. I'm the Deputy Leader of the Council. I also have the finance portfolio in the Cabinet. Chairman, members of Cabinet will be aware that I have championed the need for maintaining our council tax support scheme for many years. We have consistently protected the benefits that are payable under this scheme to ensure our most vulnerable residents are supported. It is more important than ever that we continue to provide benefits through this scheme that mirror those that were in place before the scheme was passed to local authorities. And remember, we were passed the responsibility for the scheme together with an assuming 10% cut to the funding needed to deliver it. It is because we have protected our scheme that we have been able to provide additional support through the pandemic. We have applied a further £300 reduction to eligible residents' council tax bills this financial year, which you know has been a huge help to people who are struggling to pay bills and make ends meet. We're also proposing to apply an additional £100 of council tax support next year. This, alongside our welfare support schemes, will ensure this council is providing as much support as possible to our local residents. Chairman, I'm more than happy to move the recommendations set out in the report. Our local communities will need our support more than ever over the coming months and years, and this policy sets out a significant commitment to them for the next financial year. I'm happy to move the recommendations as set out.
Thank you, Councillor Napier. I'm very pleased to be able to second the recommendations in the report, which are set out in paragraph 17. Durham County Council is now one of a very small number of councils continuing the same level of support to our lowest income households as under the previous scheme, and the only area in the North East region to do so. We also propose to continue to pass on the town and parish element of the formula grant in the spirit of partnership working and as set out in the report. The table in paragraph 34 also makes clear that Durham's performance in council tax collection rate is stronger than any other North East council since these changes came in 2013. So these decisions continue to be the right ones, not just morally, but also economically as well. I'm also very pleased that the council has been able to help several thousand more households in the current financial year with awards of up to £300. The additional support totals £3.1 million. We're recommending a further payment of up to £100 in 2021-22 as part of the COVID-19 hardship fund. Can I thank all colleagues for all their hard work on this very important item, and I'm very happy to second the recommendations. Can I bring in Councillor Surtees, please, who's indicated that she would like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm going to be speaking later on the agenda to update Cabinet with all of the work that we've undertaken to help our local communities through the pandemic, and all of the work that the Council and partners have undertaken on addressing poverty and welfare issues across the county. But the importance of this council tax support scheme definitely cannot be underestimated. Local people are facing real difficulty. The decisions that we have taken as a Cabinet in relation to protecting this scheme over the years haven't been easy, but I'm really pleased that the scheme in County Durham still offers council tax discounts of up to 100% for eligible residents. We are the only council in the North East to provide a scheme with 100% benefits despite cuts to the funding that were made when the scheme was passed over to us to administer. Chair, I'm really pleased and very proud that we can continue this scheme, and I wholly endorse the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Surtees. Nobody else at the moment has indicated that they want to speak on this item. So if we can turn to agreeing the report and recommendations. Again, if there's any dissent, please indicate that through the chat function. Can I ask if the report and recommendations are agreed, please?
Agreed.
Agree.
Thank you. And no indications have been received, so I can confirm that the report is agreed. Thank you. We move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is Council Tax Base 2021-22 and forecast deficit on the Council Tax Collection Fund as at the 31st of March 2021. Again, if I can ask John Hewitt, Corporate Director of Resources, to present the report.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this is our annual report which sets the tax base for the forthcoming financial year 21-22 and also reports on this year's council tax base position. Estimating the tax base for next year is more difficult because of the impact of coronavirus and the significant uncertainty about what the future does look like, even looking forward to next financial year. We have set out in paragraph 4 of the report the many variables that need to be taken into account in reaching an estimate on the tax base. And that includes the economy generally, how many businesses, how many council taxpayers will be able to pay council tax, the level of house building, etc. And all of those issues need to be taken into account in setting the tax base for next year. We are forecasting a council tax collection fund deficit for this year of 4.8 million, which is set out in paragraph 11. And taking all of those things into account, we're proposing a Band D tax base for next year of 141,623.2 Band D equivalent properties. We are proposing to defer finalising the 2020-21, so the current year's collection fund position, until later this year, just so we can feed in some more data into that calculation. So we'll defer that decision until later in the year, and we'll provide an updated forecast at that year to our pre-setting bodies. The tax bases for the town and parish councils are also important and are set out in Appendix 3 of the report for information. And the recommendation, Chair, is to agree the tax base that's set out in paragraph 15. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. Again, if I can ask Councillor Napier, please, to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. The Corporate Director of Resources has set out the details of the report and the legal requirement to set the council tax base for the next financial year. I have little to add to the report other than to say it is extremely difficult for officers to estimate the future tax base position because of the uncertainty in relation to coronavirus and the future economic situation we are facing. Officers have, however, set out their estimates for the tax base for 2021-22 based on their professional knowledge and an assessment of all the elements that can influence the tax base for the next financial year. Whilst government has provided some flexibility for writing down the collection fund deficit over 3 years, this will still impact on future years' council tax base, and we hope government will provide some further support to local authorities to reflect the reduced income from council tax this financial year. Chairman, I'm more than happy to move the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Napier. I'm very happy to formally second the report this morning. Can I ask if there's anybody else who wishes to speak on this item? If not, if we can move then to the report and recommendations. Again, if there's any dissent, can you please indicate that through the chat function? Can I ask if the report is agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. No indications have been received of dissent in the chat function, so I can confirm that the report is agreed. If we can then move to item 6 on the agenda, forecast of revenue and capital outturn 2020-21, period to the 30th of September 2020, an update on progress towards achieving MTFP 10 savings. In a minute, I'll ask Councillor Shuttleworth to ask your question, but first, again, if I can ask John Hewitt to present the reports.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is our forecast of outturn to the year end for the current financial year 2021, and we're estimating these figures based on our Q2 position, so projecting forward from Q2. And as in the previous report, I think just to flag the members, there is a lot of uncertainty still in terms of producing these numbers, so they will be subject to change, but they are based on our best estimates at this point in time. But we are still making a number of assumptions, particularly around income and expenditure, which, as members of Cabinet will be aware, is very much dependent on how we respond and recover from coronavirus. In terms of highlights, we are projecting an overspend of 0.19% of the revenue budget, which is just under £1 million. But again, that is subject to change depending on the variables that I've just outlined to Cabinet, and also dependent on the future levels of support that we receive from government in relation to coronavirus. The cash limit position is set out from paragraph 11 and summarised at paragraph 30. And again, just a couple of items to highlight for Cabinet. We are still continuing to see pressures in our children's services as we have in previous years, despite putting additional growth into the budget in the current year. And we will need to look at the cash limit position of our children's services at year end to be able to revise their cash limit to a positive position, and a further report will follow the Cabinet on that. Earmark reserves are projected to reduce by circa £46 million in the current financial year. That's set out at paragraph 13 as we draw down those earmark reserves for the purposes they've been set aside for. And the capital outturn is currently estimated at £146 million at year end, which is set out in paragraph 14. The collection fund positions are also set out, which are covered in the previous paper, so I won't cover those again. We're on track to achieve our MTFP savings that are set out in the report. So, Chair, in summary, we do need to continue to monitor this closely over Q3 and towards the end of the financial year. There are significant uncertainties. The recommendations for this Q2 projection are set out in paragraph 18. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. If I can then ask Councillor Shuttleworth, please, to ask your question.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Our winter maintenance service is a vital part of services we provide to the public and ensures safety of all residents across the county. So it concerns me to see that we're saying that with councils overspent in one of the mildest winters, the council did set up a winter maintenance reserve after the terrible winter of 2010, yet some 3 years ago, £500,000 was given back in MTFP savings. So my question really is, would Cabinet give a breakdown and the more so the reason for the £420,000 overspend on winter maintenance? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shuttleworth. Can I ask Councillor Napier to respond, please?
Chairman, I believe it's Councillor Stevens who's responding.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Councillor Brian Stevens, and I have the portfolio for neighbourhoods and partnerships. Can I thank Councillor Shuttleworth for his question this morning? The provision of winter maintenance is a statutory obligation. The cost of the service is driven by the weather and is delivered in accordance with the winter maintenance policy. The forecast overspend of £420,000 is based on a projected and assumed similar level of the activities that we saw in 2019/20. This is subject to weather conditions throughout the forthcoming winter season and will be revised accordingly as the year progresses. Could I thank Councillor Shuttleworth for his question this morning?
Thank you very much, Councillor Stevens, for responding to that question, and thanks, Councillor Shuttleworth. Can I then bring in Councillor Napier, please, to speak to the reports?
Thank you, Chairman. The Corporate Director of Resources has outlined the significant uncertainty we are facing in relation to our income and expenditure, which makes financial planning and forecasting our financial position much more difficult than usual. Officers have done a remarkable job in managing our finances over this financial year. We are currently projecting an overspend position for the financial year of 0.2% of our budget. But as we have heard, this is subject to change depending on the level of government support for COVID-19 and the impact of the virus on our services over the rest of the year. The report makes clear a reserves position and sets out an estimated use of reserves this financial year of almost £47 million. As I have previously set out to Cabinet, our earmarked reserves will be used as required, and we will need to use the strength of our balance sheet to help us over the coming years. Chairman, I'm sure members are aware that once the reserves are gone, they are gone. Details of the capital programme are also set out in the report, and details of the collection fund are set out for the current financial year. Chairman, we will keep the budget under close review, and a further update will be provided at Q3. Chairman, I move the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Napier. As we've heard, the Council's financial position continues to be challenging, particularly in light of COVID-19. We are currently forecasting an overspend in excess of 50 million due to additional expenditure and loss of income. While additional government funding has made up much of this shortfall, there is still a forecast overspend this year, and there's still a great deal of uncertainty moving into the future. Given this, it will be important that we continue to closely monitor the financial period in this very challenging period. I second the recommendations in paragraph 18. Can I ask if there's anybody else, please, who would like to speak on this item? If not, obviously the recommendation's been moved and seconded. If there's any dissent, can you please indicate through the chat function as ever? Can we agree the report and recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you. There's no dissent in the chat function, so I can confirm the report is agreed. Thank you, everyone. And again, thanks to Councillor Shuttleworth for your question. If we can then move to item 7 on the agenda, it's the mid-year review report on Treasury management for the period to the 30th of September 2020. And again, if I can ask John Hewitt to present the report, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this report sets out our half-year position on borrowing and Treasury activity for the current financial year. So this is the position at the 30th of September. And in summary, the Council held £348 million worth of borrowing and £263 million worth of cash balances at the half-year point. Can report to Cabinet that no additional borrowing was undertaken in the period, as our cash balances were sufficient to enable no further borrowing to be required. And I can also confirm to Cabinet that the Council has complied with all of the Treasury management indicators that were set by Council at the time the Treasury management policy was agreed when we set the budget in February. In paragraph 23 of this report, we are seeking to increase the limits for our money market funds to provide some additional flexibility for future investment. And that's going to be particularly important given the uncertainty in the markets at the moment. So just to be clear for Cabinet, we are proposing to increase the maximum exposure for money market funds from 100 million to 125 million, and any single exposure from 20 million to 25 million. The recommendations, Chair, summarising that, are set out in paragraph 6. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. Again, if I can ask Councillor Napier to speak to the report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The Corporate Director of Resources has clearly set out the mid-year position of our Treasury management activities. The report includes one recommendation from officers to increase the limit for money market funds, and the rationale for this is set out in the report. I move the recommendations as set out, Chairman.
Thank you. I formally second the recommendations, which can be found in paragraph 6. Can I ask if there's anybody else who wishes to speak to the reports? If not, again, if we can move to agree the report and recommendations and indicate any dissent in the chat function. Can we agree the reports?
Great.
Thank you. There's no dissent, so I can confirm the report is agreed. So if we can then move to item 8 on the agenda, Lumiere 2019 evaluation. If I can ask Amy Harhoff, Corporate Director of Regeneration, Economy and Growth, to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. I'm pleased to be able to present this report today, which includes a summary of the Lumiere evaluation and the event which took place in 2019, which was our 10th anniversary event and our 5th event, having first started Lumiere events in 2009. The paper outlines a number of benefits to the event, both community-based and economic. We engaged as part of the project over 80 businesses and community organisations, including working with our partner Artichoke to secure significant funding for the sponsorship and delivery of the overall events. Despite the very, very difficult weather conditions during the event in 2019, we still saw incredible visitor numbers of upward of 170,000, demonstrating this event as both having regional and national significance. Although, as the report does outline, this event has been accessible to both a local audience across County Durham, with significant visitors coming from within the county, as well as across the North East, the UK, and indeed international visitors. In terms of our sentiment surveys, we saw that over 90% of people supported the event and thought the event was good. And importantly, not just the event itself, but a number of events which took place around schools and libraries as part of wider engagement. And section 29 of the report just outlines for Cabinet some of those different activities that took place. We saw almost £3 million from the visitors who came to our event, and an overall economic value of over £11 million to our economy. As we look to the future of this event, we are currently committed to an event in 2021. Of course, at the moment, events are taking place in a difficult time, but we continue to work proactively with our partner to look to securing an event in 2021. And we are clear that, given our experience in delivering Lumiere, that there will be options to be agile and to reflect the context that we are in at the time, particularly in reflecting the current global pandemic. It's with that, Chair, that I note the recommendations are in section 8 of this report.
Thank you, Amy. The recommendations are to note, but I would like to now invite Councillor Joy Allen to speak to the report, please.
Thanks, Chair. This paper sets out the findings of the Lumiere 2019 evaluation and the dates for Lumiere 2021. Lumiere is commissioned by Durham County Council and realised by the artistic expertise of our key partners, Artichoke. Lumiere is considered to be the biggest and best light festival in the country, despite cities such as Leeds and Lancaster developing their own light festivals in recent years. Lumiere 2019 was a landmark 10th edition and attracted 165,000 visitors to 37 installations, despite torrential rain. But Lumiere is more than just a world-class event. It's a community development programme involving 2,000 people across the county. It's an international conference platform attracting important speakers and influencing global cultural policy, and its significant economic engine for the county, with a 1,925% return on investment and an essential part of the county and region visitor economy. The evaluation highlights the overwhelming positive response from the public, and in particular their view that the festival is good for the image of Durham. I'm sure I'm not the only person here that saw their social media feeds fill with images of Lumiere as people around the county and beyond shared the announcement of the dates for 2021. This reflects public confidence in the county's drive for culture-led economic growth and regeneration. While we hope that Lumiere 2021 will be a wonderful opportunity to gather together after a very difficult year with too little human connection, we are planning carefully in case of continued COVID-related restrictions. Rest assured that even if we must do it differently, we will still do it brilliantly, working with businesses locally to manage the event across the county to ensure the full benefit of the event for all. Chair, I'm happy to move this report.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Allen. Is anybody else wanting to speak on this item, please? If not, as I mentioned, the recommendations in the report are to note. So we're asked to note the report again. If there's any dissent, can I ask people to indicate in the chat function? Can I ask if the report's agreed and that we agree to note the reports?
Great.
Thank you. Thank you for that report. Thanks, Councillor Allen. We move on to item number 9, poverty issues. If I can ask John Hewitt, Corporate Director of Resources, to present this report, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this report updates on the welfare, economic and poverty indicators for the county, and also sets out the council and partners' response to the coronavirus in these particular areas. The impact of the welfare reform is set out from paragraph 26 of the report, which sets out the research that's been undertaken by a number of bodies, but particularly the Joseph Rowntree Foundation is set out in the report, and the Financial Conduct Authority, which set out details of the low financial resilience in particular across local communities and the reduction in income that has occurred as identified as part of their studies. The national policy update is set out from paragraph 40 of the report, which sets out details of the policy announcements in relation to the various support mechanisms that have been put in place by government at a national level. The Council's response is set out from paragraph 79 of the report, which sets out how the Council's poverty strategy and plan has supported local communities prior to and during the pandemic. The future direction from the Council and partners is set out from paragraph 99 of the report, which includes further work on No Wrong Door, as set out in the report, and reviewing our advice and guidance services right across the county. Chair, this is a significant detail in the report which provides Cabinet with an overarching position on the work undertaken by the Council and partners in this particular area, and Cabinet is asked to note the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, John. If I can move then to the report and recommendations, can I invite Councillor Angela Surtees, Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Social Inclusion, to speak, please?
Thank you, Chair. As the Chair said, I'm Councillor Angela Surtees and I hold a portfolio for social inclusion. Chairman, residents across communities of County Durham continue to struggle with the government's ongoing programme of welfare reform, the lasting impacts of the recession and nearly a decade of austerity, all of which have seen our county and the wider region suffer much more than others, and recently more through COVID-19. The pandemic has compounded the financial hardship many of our residents were already experiencing, and despite temporary changes to existing welfare benefits and implementation of large new schemes, households face greater uncertainty over the future in terms of financial support available. As the COVID-19 pandemic evolved and residents and communities were locked down, we started to see an inevitable shift in the issues reported to the Council and partner agencies, particularly around family finance, access to food, employment, access to benefits, and just general daily living expenses. This, no doubt, is set to accelerate through the second lockdown as the economy contracts and the people find themselves without an income, many of which it will be for the first time, plunging them into uncertainty and affecting people's mental and physical health. Despite the funding constraints that we face, as a people-focused council, we remain committed to providing help and support for residents in financial difficulty as part of our vision for County Durham. It is important now more than ever that during these unprecedented times, the council and its partners continue to respond, and through the Council's revised Poverty Action Strategy vision, we aim to improve the standard of living and daily lives of those residents in County Durham who are currently experiencing immediate financial hardship due to the COVID-19 pandemic and associated economic shocks, and to help alleviate long-term issues that can lead households on low incomes to experience financial pressures and poverty. Chairman, poverty is on the increase. We know that. Only recently, half of our county child poverty figures was raised to 1 in 3, and the other half of the county is 1 in 4. And as the Council's portfolio holder for social inclusion, I'll be working to ensure that the Council is at the front line of responding to these challenges through the services we provide, our network of area action partnerships and wider partnerships. Working with our partners, we are at the heart of our local areas and interact with residents' lives on a daily basis, and are committed to achieving great social mobility, fairness and community cohesion. We will strive to make it everyone's business to respond to poverty, risk to financial exclusion and homelessness. As a council, we've invested additional resources to support those struggling with their financial situation, and these resources will provide support over the full social inclusion portfolio, including welfare provision, food, employment support, and access to advice services. Only yesterday, I saw the launch of the Bread and Butter Thing in one of our communities, an initiative to support food poverty, invested in through our poverty strategy work. It was hosted by a People's Community Centre and delivered by volunteers from our communities, often those actually living in poverty but want to give something back. This initiative was one ward only, and it supported over 113 families alone yesterday with low-cost nutritious food, and I really look forward to seeing this initiative rolled out across other areas in County Durham in the foreseeable future. Chairman, I will keep Cabinet and members up to date on developments as this agenda progresses, and I move the recommendations set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Surtees. If I can ask Councillor Gunn, please, to second the report, and also ask other Cabinet members if they wish to speak on this, please, to indicate in the chat function. Councillor Gunn.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Owen Gunn, and I hold the portfolio for Children and Young People's Services. I also welcome this report. It's extremely comprehensive. There's a lot to cover, and it has covered it. And I echo Councillor Surtees' comments as our residents struggle with the ongoing impact of the government's austerity programme, which has been compounded, absolutely compounded, and tragically compounded by the COVID pandemic, which we see in our schools, our workplaces, and our communities. I'm proud of the way that this council has worked with partner agencies in the voluntary and community sector, in education, in employment, and housing sectors. That's been vital for us. We've pulled together across the council to maximise our joint efforts in supporting the most vulnerable. And I thank all of those sectors for working with us. We are grateful as well of recent government announcements about supporting those on free school meals during holiday times, and that followed, of course, national campaigns. However, I would make the point as well that Durham County Council has been supporting families through the holiday periods for years and will continue to do so whilst there is a need. Those in our communities, the voluntary sector in particular, that have been supporting us to support those families will know that we have been supporting for many, many years. I'm also particularly proud of the response the council made to back to school costs at the start of term, offering a grant to parents struggling to meet this extra expense. That's been crucial for some of our families. I welcome the work that's been done to date. I commend it. And as highlighted in this comprehensive report, it is exceptional work in my view, and necessary. And I wish to reiterate that this council takes the welfare of its most vulnerable as one of its top priorities. We've seen that in this report, and we will continue to do that as one of our core values. I'm delighted to second this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gunn. If I can then ask Councillor Shaw, please, to speak.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Councillor Kevin Shaw. I'm the portfolio holder for strategic housing and assets. Our authorities have introduced many new initiatives associated with housing support, fuel poverty and homelessness to protect, support and help provide for our most vulnerable as we move into the second decade of Tory-led government, which has led to significant increases in poverty. Poverty strikes across generations. It affects children, young adults, the middle-aged and the elderly. It affects those who are single and those who are married. And in the aged, it affects single pensioners who are female or male and those who are a couple. It affects those out of work. It affects those in work and who cannot earn enough to keep afloat. It affects those who have no home, those who are in temporary accommodation and those in private rented accommodation. It affects those in social housing and those with mortgages. And the common denominator here is everyone must have somewhere to live. And we as an authority, we have much to be proud of in how we work to support and protect those who have need in accessing, keeping or buying a home. In housing support, we provide benefit advice, debt advice, welfare assistance, negotiation with the landlord, employability, referral to credit union, Citizen Advice Bureau and welfare rights, access to food bank, support for rent or mortgage arrears, to name but a few. Regarding fuel poverty, on the uptake of fuel poverty and energy efficiency grants, County Durham is 6th nationally and is first in the region, with 34,419 energy efficiency measures installed in fuel-poor homes, and the latest figures provided for October 2010. In regards to homelessness, Durham are in the top 10 for prevention of homelessness in the country. The Rough Sleeper team continue to support rough sleepers maintaining regular, often daily contact with those on the streets, and have supported 76 rough sleepers since March 2020, and we do all we possibly can in providing a route into long-term accommodation. Chair, this is just a whistle-stop tour of some of the valuable support we provide for those affected by poverty in meeting housing needs, and unfortunately we are all well aware that a landslide may occur, forcing a huge increase in support needed as evictions will inevitably restart in the future due to rent arrears. And on that, Durham again is not sat idle. We've introduced the Stop Before You Serve scheme, which is a specialist service for landlords who are considering seeking possession of properties, looking to find landlords alternative solutions to serving an eviction notice, and we will also support the tenants through this. Chair, we are in a place as a caring authority, helping those affected by poverty as best we can, and we constantly look at what more we can do. Councillor Surtees and Councillor Gunn have spoken very eloquently today, and I share all of their sentiments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Hobbles, please.
Thank you, Councillor Hobbles, and I'm the Health Portfolio Cabinet Member. I think we all know the corona has made life much harder for many of our residents, and as a council we need to continue to support those in need, our residents at this very difficult time. The council and our communities have delivered for our vulnerable within our community. There's some excellent examples across the county, and we can all share our stories of the things that's been shared with us throughout this corona. Often very sensitive, delicate situations people have found themselves in. The council cannot reduce poverty on our own. We have to continue to collaborate and focus on delivering common outcomes. It must remain our top priority. When this pandemic is over, the inequalities gap will be much greater. We all know that, and I think the work that we are doing and being shared today must continue. And as Olwen said, children within this whole situation have been the worst affected throughout this pandemic, but also over the years. And I think the work will be much greater when we've gotten to the end of this pandemic, Chair. We already see a north-south divide. We read it on a daily basis. We read it in the newspaper. We experience it. And not only that, this pandemic is much greater in the north and the south as well, which is adding extra pressures on our family and our residents of County Durham, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hobbles. Not seen any other indications to speak. So if we can then move to the recommendations. As ever, if there's any dissent, please indicate that through the chat function. Can I ask if the report and recommendations are agreed, please?
Agreed, Chair. Agreed.
Thank you. And no indications were received, so I can therefore confirm that report is agreed. Thank you, everybody, for your hard work on that. If we can move on to item number 10, mainstream primary and secondary formula funding 2021-22. If I can ask John Hewitt, Corporate Director of Resources, to present the reports.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This report sets out the latest information on school funding for next financial year and proposes the local formula that's to be used in 21-22. Details of the funding for schools are set out from paragraph 7, and the minimum per pupil funding in paragraph 10, increasing from 3,750 to 4,180 in primary settings and 5,000 to 5,415 in secondary schools. We are proposing to consult with the Schools Forum and the basis of moving to the NFF from 21-22, and the recommendations are set out in paragraph 16, Chair.
Thank you, John. If I can ask Councillor Napier, please, to speak to the reports.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a technical report which sets out the announcements for our primary and secondary schools funding for the 2021-22 financial year. Cabinet will recall that we agreed to move towards the national funding formula, and the report is based on the conversions by 2021-22. School funding is an extremely complex area. However, the changes proposed by government in allocating funding for next year are set out in the executive summary and detailed in the report. Whilst the report sets out funding increases for next year, we will need to see how this affects each school individually. What is clear to me is that our schools need a significant funding injection from government, not just for their revenue budgets, but also a capital injection of funding to help improve all of our schools across the county. Chairman, I know Councillor Gunn has written to the Minister about this on numerous occasions. Chairman, I know we will be working closely with our education colleagues through the Schools Forum, and we will consider final budget setting once discussions are concluded. Happy to move the recommendations as set out.
Thank you, Councillor Napier. If we can have a seconder, please, Councillor Gunn.
Thank you, Chair. This is a very detailed report, and it sets out the initial funding allocations from government for our schools funding for next financial year. Any increases in funding are welcomed. However, we need to see the details of how the funding for next year flows through our schools. I've no doubt that many of our schools will continue to struggle after years of funding allocations from government that do not meet the cost pressures they are facing. As Councillor Napier mentioned, I've written to various ministers about the need for our schools to be properly funded and to take account of the pressures they are facing on a daily basis. I've also written to government about the lack of capital investment strategy for our schools in this county. It's simply not acceptable that we don't have a structured government funding capital investment scheme for our schools. On both issues that I've written to government about school funding and capital investment, the responses do not reflect the reality that we are facing and that our schools are facing. I can only hope, and we all have to live in hope, I can only hope that these issues will form part of the levelling up agenda that we hear a lot about, but with little substance or detail, unfortunately. Chair, we will consider this funding again early next year, when we will look at the impact on individual schools. And before this, we will speak with the Schools Forum that I attend as well and seek their views on the formula. I want to close by thanking all of our teachers, teaching assistants and school support staff for the magnificent job they are doing in extremely difficult times. And I want to thank our young children who are growing up in a world where they are having to adapt and change very quickly. We know it isn't easy. So thank you to every single one of you. I'm happy to second the report, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gunn. Can I ask if there's anybody else wishing to speak, please? Please indicate. If not, can we move to agree the report and recommendations? Again, if there's any dissent, please indicate in the chat function. Can I ask if the report is agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. And there's no dissent indicated, so I can confirm that that report is agreed. So if we can move then to item 11 on the agenda, Regional Adoption Agency full business case. If I can ask John Pearce, Corporate Director of Children and Young People's Services, to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. John Pearce, Corporate Director, Children and Young People's Service. So the report sets out a proposal to form a regional adoption agency, Adopt Coast to Coast, in collaboration with Cumbria County Council and Together for Children Sunderland. The Education and Adoption Act 2016 places a requirement on all local authorities to carry out their adoption functions through a regional adoption agency, and the deadline to move to that is the end of this financial year. Significant work has been undertaken since the last Cabinet report on this issue in December 2018, and that's been to develop an approach that best fits the geographic and demographic makeup of the Adopt Coast to Coast areas. There were a number of challenges with the hosted model, which was the original proposal, and as a result of that, work was undertaken with the Department for Education to explore a range of options that would best meet adoption needs across our areas. The partnership model that's described in the attached full business case provides an opportunity to build on the strengths of each of the 3 areas while still gaining the advantages of the regional adoption agency model. The partnership model also provides minimum disruption to services, with the majority of resources, both staffing and finance, remaining within each of the 3 individual areas. A small hub will be established and will be based in Durham, and that will operate across the whole of the Adopt Coast to Coast area, with the head of adoption providing professional leadership for the regional adoption agency. The approach set out in the report has been approved by the Department for Education and is in line with the statutory requirements for a regional adoption agency. If the recommendation in the report is agreed by Cabinet today, and also through the governance arrangements in Cumbria and Sunderland, it's proposed that the Adopt Coast to Coast regional adoption agency will go live from the 1st of April 2021 in line with the statutory guidance. The recommendations are set out in paragraph 14. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. If I can now invite Councillor Gunn, Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Children and Young People Services, to speak, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to present this report on the Council's proposed partnership with Cumbria County Council and Together for Children Sunderland to work collaboratively to develop and deliver their respective adoption services as part of the new Adopt Coast to Coast Regional Adoption Agency. And this will be under the leadership of a new regional adoption agency head of service. The partnership model meets the Secretary of State's requirements for local authorities to carry out their adoption functions jointly, and the aspirations that regional adoption agencies will reduce the number of organisations recruiting and assessing adopters, as they will operate at a much greater scale. The partnership model will support the development of practice across the local authorities to improve the timeliness of matching children to prospective adopters, improve targeted recruitment so that a pool of adoption-ready adopters is available to meet the needs of children with plans of adoption, and also an improved offer of high-quality adoption support services across the geographical footprint of Adopt Coast to Coast. Securing timely adoption for children who are unable to be cared for in their birth families remains a key priority for the Council, as is the delivery of high quality services and support to those who wish to adopt. I'm confident that the new proposed service will support us in achieving these aims. I recommend the content of this report to you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gunn. If we can have a seconder to the report, please. Councillor Lucy Hovels.
Thank you, Chairman. The partnership with Cumbria County Council and Together for Children Sunderland outlined within the report is clear and evidence the commitment to a collaboration across the respective local authority adoption services that will support the best outcomes for children who require permanency via adoption. It is pleasing to note that the Council and its partners have high aspirations for adopted children and the improvement and sufficiency of high quality adoption support services, which will benefit adopted children and their families throughout their lives. I second the recommendations within the report, Chairman. A very important report, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hovels. If I can ask if there's anybody else wishing to speak. And if not, if we can move on to agreeing the report and recommendations. Again, if there's any dissent, please indicate that in the chat function. Can I ask if this report is agreed, please?
Agreed.
Chair.
Thank you. And there's no indications in the chat function, so I can confirm that the report is agreed. If we can then move on to item 12 on the agenda, overview and scrutiny review of GP services in County Durham. I'd now like to welcome Councillor John Robinson, Chair of the Adults Wellbeing and Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee, to Cabinet, and ask him to report speak to the report to Cabinet, please. Thanks, John.
Good morning, Chair. May I thank you and Cabinet for inviting me to address you this morning. My name, as you say, is Councillor John Robinson, and I am Chair of the Adult Wellbeing and Health Overview Scrutiny, and I am presenting to Cabinet this morning the Scrutiny Review Report into GP services in the County of Durham. Chair, this is a cross-party report across the whole political spectrum of the Council, and may I thank all colleagues for their contribution. The review was undertaken following concerns about the potential cumulative impact of a number of proposed applications to either review, merge or close GP branch services across the whole of the County of Durham. The Overview and Scrutiny Committee agreed terms of reference, which are detailed in paragraph 3 of the cover report, but they include the roles and responsibilities of the National Health Service of England and CCGs in commissioning GP services, the extent to GP coverage across the County of Durham, the current process for monitoring GP services, and the ratings by the CQC of the GPs in the County of Durham. Workload and demographic pressures impacting upon the availability and access to GP services, patient feedback and satisfaction with their GP services in the County of Durham, work proposed and initiatives considered by the CCG and general practice to address workforce pressures, recruitment, training and retention of GPs. And finally, the Council's role in developing and delivering sustainable transport solutions to access GP services. The working group met on a number of times and evidence was received from the North Durham and the DDES CCG, the North East Ambulance Service NHS Foundation Trust, the Care Quality Commission, the County Durham and Darlington Local Medical Committee, Durham County Council's Public Health, Durham County Council's Planning Policy and Transport Services, the NHS England's 2018 GP Surgeon Patient Survey, and reports by Durham's County Durham Health Watch into care navigation. And finally, the Access Service to GP Services Survey and the GP Enter and View visits. A comprehensive inquiry to which all the agencies gave detailed evidence in both person and written. The key findings of the review, Chairman, are set out in paragraphs 6 to 30, which have informed the proposed 9 recommendations. A service response to the National Health Service County Durham CCG is also included with the report, and I point to paragraph 31. The recommendations relate to recommendations 1 and 2, the provision of the National Health Service long-term plan, the development of primary care network, and the proposed levels of investments to improve and increase staffing resources and the skill mixes within general practice. Recommendation 3, the findings of Health Watch County Durham's review of care navigation and the need for a more robust communication and engagement strategy to promote care navigation across all G practices in the County of Durham. Recommendation 4, the promotion of alternative methods of access primary care appointments to face-to-face by utilising new technology which will facilitate online service provision. Recommendation 5, the use of local intelligence by the Care Quality Commission as part of its reviewed inspection regime. Paragraph 6, the use of Section 106 agreements to contribute to enhanced health services where increased demand is demonstrated. Recommendation 7, the need for an integrated transport solution which supports people to access GP services and associated marketing and communication information. Recommendation 8, continuation of and support for the workforce development initiatives identified and introduced by County Durham CCGs to address GP recruitment and retention, as well as the practice vulnerability toolkit developed across the County of Durham. Finally, recommendation 9, that the NHS 111 and Durham CCG publicise the service's role in arranging direct appointments with GPs where appropriate, and the promotion of this facility across the community of County Durham. Chairman, the full report can be found at Appendix 2, and may I recommend to Cabinet to consider this morning: 1, that Cabinet endorse the recommendations contained within the review report and agree to work in partnership through the Health and Wellbeing Board, chaired by Councillor Mrs Hovels, to deliver the identified improvements. And 2, a review of the progress made against the recommendations contained within the report, and that will be undertaken 6 months after the report is considered by yourselves. It would be remiss of me, Chairman, not to place the committee's thanks on record to the general practice and primary care services of the County of Durham for the role they have played in the COVID pandemic, and every member of the committee wish to thank their services. Specific thanks, Chairman, must be given on behalf of not only the working group, but Adult Health and Wellbeing Committee in general and total, to Mr. Stephen Gwillam, our Principal Security Officer, whose advice and support is so valuable and welcome as always. Finally, Chairman, I would like to thank members, officers and partners for their valuable contribution to the review, and to you, Chairman and Cabinet, for allowing me to present to you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson, and can I thank you and all members of the Scrutiny Committee for your work on this important topic. Can I now ask Councillor Lucy Hovels, Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Adult and Health Services, to speak, please?
Thank you, Chair, and first of all, thank you to John and for Stephen, who's come and presented today. Very important piece of work which the Scrutiny undertook. You remember some time ago there was a number of problems that councils was experiencing within the communities, from doctors merging together, not being available, closures within our communities. So this piece of work is very fitting to take us forward, and it's much broader than I thought it would give. And again, yes, we do have issues around transport. People in my own ward, people of Ludworth, have to pay £20 to get a taxi to go to the doctors, and then if they have a blood test the next following day, it's another £20. And we've heard this morning around the hardship and the financial restraints upon our residents of County Durham, and that's fact. You know, this has been my experience, and I'm sure it's all been fed into the process. The 9 recommendations there. I'm really pleased to be able to take them recommendations forward. I don't think we can do it in isolation, as been outlined in the report. We do it with the CCGs and our partners across the whole system. And really just to place my thanks on record for the Scrutiny Committee undertaking this piece of work, which clearly demonstrates the need for these changes and recommendations to be taken forward. As Chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board, I will be inviting John and the Scrutiny report into that arena, so for further discussion, and obviously this morning, Chair, it's my pleasure to agree the recommendations and to remove the report and put my thanks on record for the work that's been undertaken.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hovels. If we can have a seconder, please, Councillor Gunn.
Thank you, Chair. I also thank Councillor Robinson and members of the Adult Wellbeing and Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and indeed everybody involved in this report. It is, as has been said, a timely report, as during this really difficult time we are living through, it's more important than ever that our residents have assurances about our GP services. That our residents value them is seen by the many, many representations from residents, patients themselves when changes to review or to merge or to close are proposed. As I said, this is a timely report, given all of the recommendations, which are absolutely relevant and, in my view, crucial. And also regarding the use of digital technology, whilst for some of our residents face-to-face consultations are crucial. There's never been a time when digital technology is as crucial for others. I really commend this report, and thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Can I ask if there's anyone else wishing to speak, please? If not, Can we again thank Councillor Robinson for coming and presenting to us? Can we agree the report and recommendations? Please indicate any dissent in the chat function. Is that agreed?
Agree the recommendations, Chair.
Thank you. And there's no indications of dissent, so I can confirm that's agreed. Thank you very much, everyone. If we can then move to item 13 on the agenda, the Director of Public Health Annual Report 2020. If I can ask Amanda Healy, Director of Public Health, to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm going to share the slides that are in the pack this morning. So just double check that members can see those.
Yeah.
Great. That's lovely. Thank you. Obviously, as Director of Public Health, I have a statutory responsibility to write an annual report and the Council to publish that report. And this is my third annual report as your Director of Public Health. Obviously, this year I couldn't write a report without obviously a major focus on COVID-19 and the huge impact that that has had on everyone's lives across the county, both in terms of how people live their lives and obviously sadly the deaths that we've also experienced from some of our residents. However, the report also outlines some of the other work that's taken place over the course of the year. And as ever, although this is a public health report, public health and the public health team can only carry out work by working with and through others. So the report itself always has a section to outline health and wellbeing across County Durham. And I think an area that's really developed over the last year is the information that's included on Durham Insight, where the link is there on the slide. And some of the recent developments include a COVID-19 landing page hosting the public COVID-19 dashboard, and we're doing some member sessions to go through the detail of that dashboard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We also have a dashboard providing information on our shielded patient list and also how we compare against other North East local authorities. However, another area over the last year that's been updated has included information on our economy and employment. Again, a really important part, particularly in terms of the recovery and the inequality that has come about through COVID-19. And then there's a new interactive content covering the index of multiple deprivation. So hopefully people can access information about health and wellbeing as easily as possible. I'm just drawing a little bit of attention to the work that has happened in terms of health and wellbeing and data relating to COVID-19. This information, what we've tried to do from the very beginning of the pandemic is to use, the information that is reliable and is validated data and keep our public as up to date as possible. And we do now publish this twice a week and update it twice a week. And it goes right down to local areas and includes a regional and national comparison. So a lot of detailed information is held within there. A key part of the annual report has obviously been part of the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Obviously, one of the most significant public health challenges in living memory, and with real repercussions for health and well-being. And I think what we have experienced, both as a direct consequence of COVID-19 and the restrictions, it has impacted on other areas. And in the report, there's quite a detailed piece of work on a health impact assessment. And you'll see some of the areas that are affected broader than COVID-19, and some of those have already been highlighted through Cabinet this morning, such as poverty, for example, but the impact on people's health and well-being, mental health, physical activity and the behaviours, which is actually a bit of a positive, employment, particularly our younger age employment, education, businesses, and then the socio-economic inequalities. And the health impact assessment that's been carried out will be taken forward, and recommendations from that health impact assessment will feed into other areas of work, such as the Poverty Action Steering Group. But the response to COVID has been drawn together in our local outbreak control plan, which is also identified in the report and which is overseen by the Health and Wellbeing Board, with regular updates both on the response and the recovery. And I think one of the aspects in terms of the response has been that absolutely services, communities and residents have been working together to address the major challenges that COVID-19 has presented to us. And currently, in relation to COVID-19, our rates remain high, although there are some small signs of them starting to reduce again, which is positive. A major part of COVID-19 and something that happened, really quickly and rapidly, and I think could only happen so rapidly because of the community infrastructure that isn't already in place in County Durham, was when we had to stand up our community hubs. And that was enabled us to provide support to over 10,000 people, with letters out to 26,000 of people who are on the original shielded list, active support with 2,000 of the shielded residents, with food supplies, and 1,500 needing support with pharmacy supplies. Now, you can see on the slide, local resident Charlie Elliott supporting vulnerable members of the community by delivering boxes of freshly prepared meals. And I think the response, both through our community groups, mutual aid groups that were set up, through the AAPs, working with the coordination at the community hub, really enabled us to support residents, particularly through that first lockdown. And obviously now we're calling back to those local residents and groups to support us through this second phase of the pandemic. And obviously we know it is far from over, but we are committed to working with partners, and we're seeing that real support in terms of health and well-being for Durham residents. We often focus on the challenges to health and well-being, and I think what we've tried to do is really draw out the assets and the strengths of County Durham. And so this slide demonstrates just some of those assets, because they can support and help and protect health. And some of that might be our green infrastructure and the heritage that we have in County Durham, the real strength of our communities. With the area action partnerships, we also have 43 CREs that provide support to people who are isolated, and the carers across County Durham, with 59,000 adult carers who provide a huge amount of support to our vulnerable residents. And then a range of services, and many of those services are connected to ensure that we offer, joined up services for residents. You remember that I set out 7 priorities in the DPH annual report, focused around the Taylor family and the community in which they live. And this report gives an update on the priorities and then a bit of a deep dive into 2 of those areas. So in terms of the priorities, just to kind of pull out one of the areas on here is really our high quality drug and alcohol services. And again, throughout the pandemic, what we've seen is a real transformation of that service to ensure that appointments could go online, that clients could access treatment safely, and also provide that psychosocial recovery service online for clients and keep them in that recovery journey. And then again, another P1 is particularly at this time of year is encouragement for people to have the flu vaccination, and the flu board, which is a joint board with the NHS and partners such as Healthwatch, have supported a huge vaccination programme, only being kind of halted by the lack of vaccine to use across the whole population. We wanted to do that for all of our staff and for other key members of our public, and we're waiting to extend it in that way, but still our clinically at-risk population are seeing a high uptake of flu vaccination, so important alongside obviously COVID-19. And then there are 2 areas in the report where there's a little bit more in-depth work that's taken place over the last year. And I think it's already been mentioned this morning in terms of support, in terms of warmer homes, and there's been a very in-depth pilot to offer interventions and replacement boilers for those who are affected by cold-related ill health, jointly with the NHS and with our Housing Solutions Warmer Homes team. And then a major piece of work which was part of the County Durham plan in terms of a policy for hot food takeaways that have to be within certain retail centres to change the access to those to support a healthy weight in County Durham. And obviously, every child having the best start in life is such a priority. If we can give children that best start in life, it will see them right through to an extended healthy life expectancy and life expectancy. And some of the work, and there's obviously a lot more detail in the report, a few of the examples here are some work on an infant feeding pathway. And then there was a major piece of work carried out to really understand the needs of our children with special education needs and disability. But actually, as well as doing that work, that's then not translated into real action that has improved and worked to improve the health of those young people who have special education needs and disability. So as well as the in-depth report, it's turning that into action, which is so important. And then really what we've said is, as well as the Taylor family, actually our real communities are the ones who we've worked with to impact on the health and well-being of residents living in Durham. So we've got examples on the page of working in partnership with others. So the community action team, brilliant teamwork that go into local areas to tackle housing, environmental issues, and public health have joined some of their work to support that and to reach parts of our population we would find difficult. And then the example of the Warmer Homes team. As ever, in the Director of Public Health Annual Report, there are recommendations. And in the report itself, there's an update on last year's recommendations. It's really important that I'm held to account for those recommendations and the progress on them. And these are the recommendations for the two in-depth areas of work that I've just set out in the report. And I'm really delighted to be saying that we'll be increasing the number of our schools and settings working towards the health and wellbeing framework, and a real emphasis on smoking during pregnancy, an extension of the businesses being signed up to the breastfeeding accreditation scheme, as well as some obviously dedicated work, particularly focused around housing, with housing and planning colleagues. So in terms of the recommendations from the report, they are there, but then from the actual annual report itself, it's for Cabinet to receive the report and to agree to publishing the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Amanda, for your annual reports. We then turn to the recommendations, which I think you've just outlined, which are to receive and to agree to publish that report. So can I invite Councillor Hovels, Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Adult and Health Services, to speak to those recommendations, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm pleased to welcome the independent annual report from Amanda Healy, Director of Public Health, this morning. The response to the COVID-19 pandemic is a specific focus to this year's DPH annual report. The COVID-19 pandemic is one of the greatest public health challenges in living memory, with significant repercussions for health and well-being of families and communities. The response also clearly demonstrates that health and well-being is everyone's business, and the vital part that individuals, communities, businesses, services and organisations play in controlling the virus and working alongside our residents. This year's annual report has an in-depth focus on giving every child the best start in life and promoting good jobs and places to live, learn and play. It also introduces a new evidence-based approach to well-being that is being developed and will be used to help empower our communities and build their resilience. The COVID-19 pandemic is far from over. However, we are committed to working in partnership with partners, our communities and residents to continue to protect and support the health and well-being of all our County Durham residents. It gives me great pleasure this morning to propose the report in the Cabinet to support the recommendations within the report. Chairman, I therefore promote the report to the Cabinet and ask for the recommendations to be agreed. Formally move the report, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens, please.
Chairman, I am pleased to receive the report this morning and also the annual report that we've been talking about. The annual report provides an update on the progress made of the 7 public health strategic priorities and I am pleased to see how we have worked with our partners in the community to plan and launch County Durham Together, a community hub to support socially vulnerable people during the pandemic. I am also proud of how early action partnerships have played a significant role in supporting the communities during this period. The report leads into a number of recommendations that we will be taking forward next year. I am therefore happy to second the annual report.
Thank you. Councillor Gunn has also indicated that she would like to speak. Councillor Gunn, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would first of all like to thank the Director of Public Health for this report. It's very detailed, there's a lot in it, but I also want to thank her and everyone involved for the outstanding work around the COVID response during these cruel, unusual and very stressful times. The Director mentioned also the community support. And I think all of us have seen in our communities the amazing work of volunteers who've stepped up and helped and supported in our own communities. We've seen it on a daily basis. And as I see it, all 7 of the public health strategic priorities outlined on page 14 will help us to help our residents to fight this virus. There's no getting away from the fact that building resilience has never been more crucial than it is now. And I think, given that the health of our communities is paramount, we need to continue to have available to us the public health funding to continue this important and crucial work. It's not possible to do all of this work, to develop it and to ensure that the strategic priorities are actually carried out unless we have that funding available to us. So going forward, I think that's important. I also, when I read this report, what shouts out to me is that there are so many layers of work that are being carried out in our communities, some of which I think may be hidden. So I commend this report. It is detailed, but it is an extraordinarily good read as well about the many things we are actually doing in this county. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gunn. Nobody else has indicated that they want to speak on this item. So if we can turn to the recommendations. Again, if I can ask any dissent to be put in the chat function, please. Can we agree the recommendations, please?
Agreed.
Thank you. No dissent, so the recommendations are agreed. Can I thank Amanda Healy for that Director of Public Health annual report, which I think also goes on to full council. I think I'm right in saying as well. So thank you. Item 14 is any other business. I've not been informed of any other business. So item 15 is resolution to exclude the press and public. So I now need to ask for a mover, please, to the recommendation to exclude the press and public, please.
Move the necessary resolution, Chairman.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that?
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you. Does everyone agree?
Agree.
Thank you. Before we move into the private part of the meeting, I would like to thank everyone for taking part and to those members of the public and media who have watched this meeting. That concludes the business for the open part of the meeting. Thank you.